Hey, what's up? It's your boy PK, Professor Ken. We're now moving on. We're at Law 14. Better a turnout than a burnout. When I first came in the game, I was fortunate enough to be with a veteran young lady by the name of Dirty Red. She was the first lady that I ever, received any ends from. I was 16. She was given to me by a friend of mine's, Father Divine. We didn't understand what we was doing. He just didn't want her, to be with him and his other three girls. And he said, and I asked him, could I have her? He said, yeah. We was young. It was just some kiddie shit. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, me and her ended up getting money together, and hanging out for a minute. And, what I didn't realize is that she had a lot of game. She used to always run game on me, tell me she was sick and, tell me she couldn't work tonight and, things were bad and, she was always complaining, and I'm sitting here, I'm thinking that came with the game, but I was green. She was just a burnout. She had been in the game for years. She was tired of, the game, and she was like, man, I got to work this young cat, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, she gave me a lot of game. And I believe one of the reasons why she was giving me a lot of game was because she wanted me to eventually, move on and expand, to other aspects so I can do my thing and not depend on her. You see what I'm saying? And we have some help or whatever. But eventually, I ended up copping a few other dames. And, this one dame I came up with, same thing, burnout. She had drag. She was running games, so she would tell me stuff like, she could only make $400. But she was a top notch, straight up, dime piece, every bit of a stack a day if she wanted to. So one of these days, one day I played a trick on her. I said, look here. I said, this is what I want you to do. And I'm just paraphrasing. I'm not speaking specifically as it is in the book. I said, I want you to go out there, and I said, I want you to get X amount of dollars. And if you get X amount of dollars, then me and you can kick it, by a certain time. So she got that X amount of dollars, which is the same amount of money that she would normally bring in at that night. So when she brought in that money, I said, okay, well, look here, now that you brought that in, I want you to go and, spend the rest of the night and, and get that again and again and again. And she did that. And really what it was just a test. Sometimes, when you're dealing with people that's been in the game for a while, they burnouts, when you have to constantly test them, you have to constantly manipulate them and put game, on them and, let them see that, you're not slow. And that's just too much work for me. And the same thing in business. You don't want a person that think he or she know everything and always trying to tell you what to do with your business and complaining and making other employees look at you like, man, what's wrong with the boss? The boss can't handle, the employee. The boss don't have as much knowledge as the employee. Or this person's supposed to be the example, but the person don't have no personal initiative. The person is not motivated, and everybody looking at you like, wow, you're not a good choice of people. You don't pick them right. So a lot of times, it's better to have a turnout than a burnout. Somebody that's fresh off the press, somebody that's really, got the motivation and the inspiration, who drop excuses and pick up purposes. You know what I'm saying? We need those kind of people in our companies and in our business, because these are the type of people that definitely get it done and make sure that they want to impress the boss and make sure that the boss appreciate them and give them what they would call, I guess in the business world, a raise, or, in the game, a position. So when you got young blood around, you got young fire, it's easy to get better results. Pimps perspire and hoes expire. When a bitch expire, it's just a rap.com. It's done.net. Ain't nothing else you can do .org. It's a wrap. So you just got to push on and move on and get to the next one. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like I said, to me, by the time a chick get 24, 25, to me, I think by that time, if she's been in the game for a few years, she done burnt out. Now, there's still a lot of dames out there that's older, that's about their money, but their mind is not set the way it should be set, because they already set it, for their own ways and how they feel about different things. And it's hard to penetrate that, man. I know. I tried it. I want to read from the book, you know, Law 14. We're going to read a little bit, and we're going to go to the ism. And it says in page 55, it's a lot easier to teach someone the way you want things done than to unteach someone else bad habits. One of the things that a lot of P's used to say, man, is, I don't like to pimp behind another pimp. I don't like to pimp, a bitch, what I'm saying, that everybody done had. And a lot of corporations, they feel the same way. They don't like to hire people that have been with all these different companies because they're pretty much set in their ways. They've been taught a certain way. And it's an old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And that's what they is. They're a bunch of old dogs. So you trying to teach them some new tricks, and they're looking at you like you crazy. You tell them to sit twice. They sit once. You tell them to give you a paw twice, they give you a paw once. Because those are tricks that they learn, and they're comfortable with those tricks. They're comfortable with what they gain, the knowledge and the understanding from working from another company. And that's the same thing in the game. I didn't remember back in the day, I used to get with chicks, and chicks had been with somebody else, and they like, my so-and-so didn't do it like this. I don't understand. I might be like, man, pay your taxes. They look at me like, huh? Pay my taxes? I ain't never paid my taxes. All I ever did was this, that, and the other. I said, well, if you're working in a club or you doing this, then, you need to pay Uncle Sam some money. I said, that'll keep the heat off you. But they didn't understand that because they weren't taught right. You might get with one guy, he might teach his dame how to pay her taxes, how to keep her receipts, how to add up gas and food and so on and so forth, how to do a balance sheet, how to do a ledger, so when the time comes and you have to pay your taxes, everything is proper. You might teach a dame about how to get a debit card, pay for everything with a debit card, because you know that the debit company keeps receipts and keeps files, and therefore you can subpoena, or you can not necessarily subpoena, but you can ask for those files, and you can use that as a form of accounting with your accountant. But you try to teach that to these old dames, man, they look at you like you're crazy. You try to teach them about the internet, people look at you like you're crazy. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's why it's better a turnout than a burnout. It's better to teach people what you want to teach them than to unteach them what somebody else didn't teach them. Bad habits. It says no one wants to hear. Well, at my other company, we did things this way. Or my own boyfriend used to do this for me. Nobody wants to hear that. I want to hear what you and Dude and Sam and Bam did. That don't make no difference to me. I want you to listen to me. I want you to digest this information. I want you to regurgitate it after you digest it and bring it up to say, well, I gave it to you. I want something young, fresh off the press. I don't want, the old. I want the young and the restless. Somebody that got that fire up under their feet that's ready to get out there and go get it, come back with it. I don't want to hire no 80-year-old man who can barely get around. I want to hire me a young college student, fresh out of college, to run my company. I'd rather have a turnout than a burnout. That's important. I'm going to read a little more. It says, you want some, I'm going to say they, it says they, but I'm going to say you, they, however you want to say it. They want someone eager to learn and eager to please. Most people come into a situation with baggage and bad habits. But if they aren't willing to leave the bags at the door, then you can't let them in. Even if you do decide to mess with someone who is a burnout, the first thing that they have to be willing to do is to empty their head of all the things that you know. Because a closed mind can't learn. A closed mind cannot gain any knowledge because you're blocking everything out from coming in. So if you're going to leave the baggage at the door, then it's a possibility that you may be able to rise with this company. But I doubt it. That's why I always say it's better to get somebody fresh, somebody new, than to go get people who got bad habits and old ways. Better burn out, better turn out than to burn out. End of this chapter, baby. Woo!